In southern Peru lies one of the world's most impressive archaeological feats, Machu Picchu. Even after 6 centuries, these vast Inca ruins remain almost entirely intact.
High in the mist-shrouded Andes, nearly 2,400 meters above the Urubamba River, Machu Picchu perches on steep, fractured slopes that rain and earthquakes have long turned into death traps. Yet for over 500 years, this city has not only survived, but thrived. Over 700 terraces, layered with topsoil, sand, gravel, and stone, form a colossal hydraulic and structural machine, absorbing water, neutralizing hydrostatic pressure, and stabilizing the mountain itself. Massive mortarless stone walls interlock to resist tremors, fountains and channels regulate subterranean flows, and sacred stones align with solstices. In fact, Machu Picchu's terraces may not be what we thought. Today, we'll unveil the new findings. The terraces, not just gardens. Machu Picchu clings precariously to the rugged slopes of the Urubamba River Valley. For centuries, tourists and scholars have marveled at its sweeping terraces, those iconic green steps that curve along the mountainside like a giant staircase, frozen in time. Traditionally, they've been celebrated as brilliant examples of Inca agriculture, designed to let crops grow on steep terrain while managing the torrential rains of the region. Annual precipitation here can approach 2 meters, enough to transform any ordinary hillside into a river of mud. Yet, Machu Picchu endures, its terraces intact, a verdant maze carved into the living rock. But recent studies have revealed that what we see above ground is only the surface of something far more extraordinary. There are over 700 terraces sprawling across Machu Picchu's mountainside, stretching hundreds of meters along cliffs that would intimidate even the most seasoned modern engineers. At first glance, they look like simple farming plots, each layer of greenery a tidy rectangle for maize, potatoes, or quinoa. Yet beneath this apparent simplicity lies a system so sophisticated that it rivals contemporary civil engineering. Researchers have documented terraces built with 4 distinct layers. Each layer fulfills a precise technical function. At the very top, a nutrient-rich layer of topsoil nurtures crops. Beneath that, a layer of fine sand acts as a filter, preventing the soil from washing down into lower layers while controlling the speed of water flow. Below the sand, a thick bed of gravel pebbles creates voids that allow water to pass freely without destabilizing the soil. At the base, roughly shaped stones channel excess water toward drainage conduits and disperse pressure, effectively protecting the entire mountainside from the destructive forces of hydrostatic pressure. The ingenuity here is not just in the choice of materials, but in the precision of placement. Each layer was carefully measured and arranged, repeated almost identically across hundreds of terraces, spanning uneven slopes and rock outcrops. The labor required to move millions of tons of rock, gravel, sand, and soil up a mountainside with no modern machinery is staggering to imagine. Scholars estimate that the construction of these terraces, from excavation to layering, would have required decades of coordinated labor, possibly involving hundreds of workers operating in shifts. Yet the Inca did not simply build to manage rainwater. The terraces were designed to manage the mountain itself, absorbing the shocks of seismic activity, redirecting internal groundwater, and preventing landslides that would have flattened any less carefully engineered settlement. The scale of the effort is almost impossible to grasp. Archaeologist Hiram Bingham first brought Machu Picchu to international attention in 1911, but it has taken more than a century of study to uncover the full engineering sophistication of the terraces. Modern surveys using ground-penetrating radar, drone photogrammetry, and geotechnical analysis reveal that terraces are often built atop foundations, extending meters below the visible surface, embedded into fractured rock and fault lines. This subterranean construction ensures that water does not simply flow downhill in destructive torrents, but is captured, slowed, and channeled safely away. Civil engineers point out that this system could handle water volumes far beyond what the local rainfall produces, suggesting that the Inca anticipated and designed for the worst-case scenarios such as flash floods, intense storms, and even earthquakes. It's not just theory. The durability of the terraces speaks for itself. While landslides have reshaped countless nearby slopes, Machu Picchu's terraces remain remarkably intact after more than 500 years. Even the devastating 1998 El Niño floods, which caused massive damage throughout Peru, left these terraces largely unaffected. This tells us all we need to know about the precision and foresight embedded in their design. Some terraces appear overbuilt for agriculture alone. The gravel layers, the drainage channels, and the sheer volume of stone used far exceed what would be required to simply grow potatoes or maize. Scholars like engineer Anthony Aveni and geologist Kenneth Wright suggest that this complexity hints at an additional purpose beyond farming, controlling underground water flow, perhaps diverting springs or managing hydrostatic pressure from fractured rock beneath the city. This notion is supported by the location of Machu Picchu itself, which sits precisely at the intersection of multiple fault lines and is perched atop a naturally unstable mountainside. To an Inca engineer, this must have been both a challenge and an opportunity to showcase mastery over nature itself. The terraces also exhibit what modern engineers call seismic resilience. Each layer, each carefully arranged stone, can absorb and dissipate shocks from earthquakes, a remarkable feature in a region where tremors are frequent. The combination of angled walls, porous foundations, and drainage channels functions like a self-regulating system, flexing under pressure and allowing the mountain to breathe rather than fracture. Impressive, no? But we've barely scratched the surface. A mountain-sized water filter. These green steps are not just gardens. They are a mountain-sized water filter. Each terrace is a carefully engineered multi-stage filtration system designed to absorb, slow, and redirect water in precise ways. As rain pours down the mountain during the region's wet season, which can exceed 2,000 millimeters annually, the terraces do not merely shed it. They capture it, filter it, and release it safely, preventing destructive erosion, landslides, and hydrostatic pressure buildup that could otherwise tear the mountainside apart. Modern hydrological studies have quantified the terraces' capabilities, revealing a scale of engineering almost unbelievable for the 15th century. Researchers from the Pontificia Universidad Católica del Perú and civil engineers studying slope stability have found that the terraces can handle volumes of water far exceeding what rainfall alone would produce, especially during extreme events. These terraces could drain the equivalent of a small river rushing down the mountainside. The mechanics of this system are both elegant and brutal. The topsoil captures rainfall and channels it downward. Water passes through the sand layer, which acts as a filter, preventing fine particles from clogging the gravel below. The gravel layer itself forms a network of subterranean voids, allowing water to flow laterally toward central drainage channels that empty into the Urubamba Valley below. At the base, rough stone beds disperse the force of water pressure, neutralizing what hydrologists call hydrostatic pressure, the invisible force building up in saturated soils that can trigger catastrophic landslides. Each terrace is essentially a passive pump, relieving internal pressure while simultaneously sustaining life on the surface. What makes the system extraordinary is its redundancy. The terraces are layered repeatedly, hundreds of times, across uneven slopes and fractured rock. It is estimated that millions of tons of material, stone, sand, and gravel, were transported from quarries and riverbeds to the mountainside, then carefully shaped, positioned, and interlocked. Archaeologists like Luis Lumbreras and John Hemming have emphasized that this wasn't the work of a single generation. Coordinated labor over decades, possibly centuries, was required to execute this system across the full length of Machu Picchu. Hydrologists also point out that the terraces manage water coming not only from rainfall, but also from the mountain's internal groundwater system. Machu Picchu sits at the intersection of multiple geological faults, fractures in the Earth's crust that channel underground water flow. Rainwater percolates into the mountain, converges in these fault networks, and generates immense internal pressure. Left unchecked, this pressure could pry the mountain apart, unleashing landslides with devastating consequences. But the terraces, with their filtration layers and drainage channels, act as a control system for the invisible river beneath the city. Water seeps from the faults into the terraces, is filtered and directed into conduits, and is gradually released downstream. In effect, the terraces operate as a geological pressure relief system, stabilizing a mountain in constant hydrodynamic tension. Field studies have confirmed this operation. In the 1990s, during unusually heavy El Niño rainfall events, engineers observed that while surrounding slopes were stripped bare by landslides, Machu Picchu's terraces held fast. Soil remained intact, channels effectively carried away water, and crops, where they were still cultivated experimentally, survived. Adding to the intrigue is the efficiency and scale of the system. Each terrace covers hundreds of square meters, and the collective area of all 700 terraces totals more than 120,000 square meters. Multiply that by the drainage capacity of a single terrace, and you find a staggering volume of water that could be handled simultaneously. Modern engineers note that this is not just over-engineering for caution's sake. The scale strongly suggests that the Inca were responding to a predictable, substantial, and continuous threat, one coming from deep within the mountain itself rather than the sky above. It's a level of foresight that seems almost preternatural, especially considering the tools available to 15th-century engineers. Perhaps most remarkable is how the terraces integrate with the natural landscape. Channels are angled to optimize gravity flow, foundations conform to the underlying bedrock, and layers adjust subtly to accommodate micro-slopes. The terraces are also seismically resilient, a hidden feature that allows them to absorb minor tremors without catastrophic failure. Stone walls flex, gravel layers shift slightly to relieve stress, and the water channels dissipate forces that would otherwise concentrate in dangerous ways. Machu Picchu is not just perched on a mountain, it is interwoven with it, a city operating in tandem with the forces of nature rather than merely enduring them. Even today, centuries after the last Inca walked these terraces, the system functions. Rainwater infiltrates the topsoil, flows through sand and gravel, and exits through stone conduits, as if the Inca engineers had installed an invisible, centuries-long water experiment. Machu Picchu is, in a very real sense, a living hydraulic machine that continues to operate silently, invisibly, and flawlessly. Subterranean water and geological faults. Beneath the green layers of topsoil and stone, a far stranger story lies hidden. Machu Picchu sits precisely at the intersection of multiple geological faults, fractures in the Earth's crust that extend deep beneath the peaks and valleys of the Urubamba River watershed. These faults are far from inert. Geological surveys and fault mapping studies conducted by the Peruvian Geological Institute reveal that these fractures act as subterranean conduits, channels through which groundwater flows with surprising velocity and pressure. Rainwater that falls on distant peaks does not simply trickle down the mountainside. It percolates through layers of rock and soil, converging along these fault lines, building hydrostatic pressure that, unchecked, could pry mountains apart and trigger catastrophic landslides. For centuries, observers have assumed Machu Picchu was a product of spiritual or ceremonial reasoning, or perhaps a daring gamble by the Inca. But hydrologists and geotechnical engineers, including Kenneth Wright of the University of Illinois and John Hyslop, have suggested a radically different interpretation. The Inca chose this exact location not despite the faults, but because of them. By situating the city over these subterranean channels, they positioned themselves at the source of a powerful natural force, one that could be harnessed, redirected, and controlled. Each terrace, with its layers of fertile soil, sand, gravel, and stones, acts like a filter and a valve combined. Water infiltrates the top layers, percolates through sand and gravel, and is channeled into conduits that carry it safely to the valley below. But these terraces also do something more subtle and extraordinary. They modulate underground water pressure, allowing water to escape gradually. In modern terms, the terraces operate like a passive hydraulic relief system, continuously maintaining equilibrium within the mountainside. It's a function more like a giant water treatment plant or dam, yet it is embedded invisibly within the city itself. Studies using ground-penetrating radar and geotechnical modeling have shown that many terraces extend meters below the visible surface, built atop bedrock and fractured stone, effectively integrating with the mountain's natural drainage. In some areas, researchers have discovered that subterranean channels run for hundreds of meters, carrying water away from critical zones to prevent pressure accumulation. Estimates suggest that these terraces and channels collectively can manage hundreds of liters of water per second, far more than even the heaviest local rainfall would deliver. This subterranean engineering also reframes how we interpret the Inca's understanding of geology. Machu Picchu rests in one of the most seismically active regions of Peru, part of the complex Andean subduction zone where the Nazca Plate slides beneath the South American plate. Earthquakes are a continuous threat. The terrace's layered construction, with sand and gravel acting as buffers, functions as a primitive but effective shock absorber, allowing the mountainside to flex and adjust without catastrophic collapse. In this sense, the terraces are not just drainage systems. Researchers have noted that in some zones, terraces are arranged to intercept water from minor springs that emerge along fault lines. Channels converge these flows, distributing them evenly across the slope, while spillways prevent localized saturation. It is a meticulous orchestration of water and rock, where every terrace, stone, and channel plays a specific role in the overall stability of the city. The Inca were not merely planting potatoes. They were engineering a mountain-scale water management system, balancing agriculture, hydrostatics, and structural stability in a single integrated design. What makes this even more astonishing is that all of this was done without modern engineering tools or instruments. There were no computers, no pressure sensors, or no hydraulic pumps, and yet the Inca achieved what modern engineers today can only model in simulations: a self-regulating hydraulic system capable of responding to variable water flows, earthquakes, and landslides, all operating quietly beneath a city that seems so fragile to the untrained eye. Strange, otherworldly engineering details. Many walls and drainage channels of the terraces are angled with remarkable exactness, calculated to prevent water from pooling and eroding the terrace surfaces. Researchers like Kenneth Wright and civil engineer Anthony Avani have noted that these angles reflect a sophisticated understanding of soil mechanics, centuries ahead of European developments in terracing and slope stabilization. Water doesn't simply flow downward, it is guided along channels and conduits, filtered through sand and gravel layers, and released at points calculated to minimize hydrostatic pressure. Some terraces appear curiously overbuilt for the needs of simple agriculture. The volume of stone and gravel used, the depth of foundations, and the sheer labor required to move materials up a mountainside would have been enormous. Hydrologists calculate that millions of tons of stone, sand, and gravel were transported and layered with painstaking accuracy. For comparison, a European engineer in the 18th century might have used simpler gravel and soil constructions for hillside cultivation. The effort invested at Machu Picchu seems wildly disproportionate. One of the strangest discoveries comes from studies of the water itself. Archaeologists and hydrologists have found that the Inca may have tapped springs deep beneath the surface, channeling subterranean water into terraces and conduits with surgical precision. The water was not merely runoff from rain. It appears the Inca controlled flows from below, effectively regulating underground pressure and creating a consistent water source. Researchers using ground-penetrating radar and geophysical surveys have mapped channels that extend deep into fault zones beneath the city, revealing conduits designed to capture spring water, filter it, and distribute it across the terraces. The geometry and arrangement of terraces reinforce this impression. Each terrace is slightly curved, forming subtle, concentric arcs that guide water naturally toward drainage channels and prevent pooling. The sand and gravel layers beneath the soil function as a multi-stage filtration system, ensuring that water moves quickly but safely, while the stone foundations act as pressure distributors. When engineers model the system today, they find that it can handle volumes of water equivalent to a small river. Yet no such surface river exists in the immediate vicinity. The terraces, in essence, act as a subterranean dam and pressure valve, moderating a hidden flow rising from deep below the mountain itself. Even small details speak to this otherworldly sophistication. Certain walls feature subtle inclines cut precisely to guide water, while drainage channels incorporate checkpoints and spillways to manage extreme flows. The placement of rocks is not random. Stones are shaped minimally but interlocked in patterns that allow both drainage and seismic flexibility. Every terrace functions simultaneously as a garden, a filter, a pressure valve, and a structural stabilizer. Machu Picchu's design transcends time, integrating nature, stone, and water into a single functioning system. Each layer, each angled wall, each channel embodies knowledge centuries ahead of its era. A city as machine. The fountains and ceremonial baths, long assumed to be purely religious in purpose, also serve a functional role within this city machine. Archaeological studies, including those by Hiram Bingham in the early 20th century, and later analyses by the Pontificia Universidad Católica del Perú, show that fountains were integrated into the hydraulic network, allowing water to flow from higher channels to lower terraces without eroding soil or destabilizing stone structures. Even minor deviations in slope, measured in mere centimeters over tens of meters, reflect a precision that ensures water pressure is evenly distributed. The combined effect of terraces, walls, channels, and fountains is astonishing. A self-regulating system, constantly balancing water and pressure, absorbing seismic shocks, and maintaining the integrity of a city perched on one of the most precarious mountainsides in the world. But how was it built? Historians believe the city was built during the reign of the Inca Emperor Pachacuti, the ruler who transformed the Inca from a small regional kingdom into a vast empire during the mid-15th century. Most scholars date the construction to roughly 1450 CE, shortly after Pachacuti conquered the surrounding region and expanded the Inca state from its capital at Cusco. Rather than a random settlement, Machu Picchu appears to have been planned as a royal estate, a sacred and political retreat for the emperor and his elite court, a place where state ceremonies, agricultural experimentation, and religious rituals could take place far from the crowded imperial capital. The site's position between the Andean highlands and the Amazon basin also gave it strategic value, controlling routes through the rugged mountains and linking different ecological zones of the empire. Construction likely began under Pachacuti and may have continued under his successor, Topa Inca Yupanqui, who ruled from about 1471 to 1493. Archaeologists estimate that the city took several decades to complete, possibly 20 to 40 years, though expansion and maintenance continued afterward. Unlike modern projects with wages and budgets, the Inca relied on a labor system known as mita, a state-organized obligation requiring communities across the empire to send workers for large construction efforts. Tens of thousands of laborers from surrounding provinces rotated through the site, quarrying stone, shaping blocks, hauling materials up the steep slopes, and building terraces layer by layer. Because the Inca had no iron tools, no wheeled transport, and no draft animals capable of pulling heavy loads, every block and every basket of soil had to be carried or dragged by human effort. The scale of the project was immense. Machu Picchu contains more than 200 buildings, along with over 700 agricultural terraces covering roughly 32,000 hectares of the surrounding landscape. Millions of tons of stone, gravel, and soil were quarried, transported, and assembled into structures that still stand today. The terraces alone required enormous engineering effort. Builders had to excavate deep foundations, fill them with rough stone for drainage, add layers of gravel and sand, and finally spread fertile soil hauled from distant valleys. In some cases, soil may have been transported many kilometers uphill, basket by basket, to create arable land on otherwise barren slopes. But how much did it cost? Well, that's tricky to answer. You see, the Inca economy operated without currency in the modern sense. Instead of money, the empire measured wealth in labor, land, and stored food. If historians attempt to translate the labor involved into modern economic terms, the construction could easily represent tens of millions of labor hours, equivalent to a major modern infrastructure project. But to the Inca state, the cost was embedded in the mita system. The design of the city reveals careful planning and hierarchy. The urban center is divided into two main sectors: an agricultural zone dominated by terraces, and a ceremonial and residential zone containing temples, plazas, and elite dwellings. Among the most important structures are the Temple of the Sun, the Room of the Three Windows, and the carved stone known as the Intihuatana, which aligns with solar events and may have been used for astronomical observation or ritual. Water also played a central role in the city's design. A sophisticated network of fountains and canals, fed by a mountain spring, carried water through the settlement in a controlled cascade, supplying residences, temples, and agricultural areas while preventing erosion. Machu Picchu was never a large city by population. Archaeological evidence suggests that at its peak, it may have housed 500 to 1,000 residents, including nobles, priests, artisans, agricultural specialists, and servants who maintained the estate for the emperor. Many workers likely lived there only temporarily, arriving during planting or construction seasons. The city was also connected to the vast Inca road network, the Capac Ñan, which stretched more than 40,000 kilometers across the empire, linking remote mountain settlements with imperial centers. Despite its grandeur, Machu Picchu's activities as a royal estate was relatively brief. In 1532, the Spanish conquistador Francisco Pizarro captured the Inca ruler Atahualpa, triggering the collapse of the Inca political system. Within decades, Machu Picchu appears to have been abandoned, likely as the empire fractured and populations relocated. Unlike many other Inca sites, however, the city was never discovered or destroyed by Spanish forces, perhaps because its remote location hid it deep within the mountains. For centuries, the site remained largely unknown to the outside world until 1911, when American explorer Hiram Bingham reached the ruins. Although local farmers already knew of the terraces and stone structures, Bingham's expedition brought Machu Picchu to global attention, launching decades of archaeological study that continue today. Other strange facts and theories. Many of the city's walls, including those forming temples, palaces, and terraces, consist of massive blocks cut and fitted together without mortar, sometimes weighing tens of tons. Despite centuries of earthquakes, these walls remain stable. Engineers and geologists have marveled at this technique, known as ashlar masonry, noting that blocks are shaped to interlock perfectly, their edges angled to absorb seismic shocks. During the 1970 earthquake that devastated parts of Peru, including nearby Cusco, Machu Picchu's masonry suffered remarkably little damage. This earthquake-proof craftsmanship demonstrates not just aesthetic skill, but a sophisticated understanding of structural engineering, centuries ahead of its time. Hiram Bingham, who rediscovered Machu Picchu in 1911, marveled at the flawless fit of the stones, and modern analysis has only deepened the mystery, revealing subtle inclines, convex surfaces, and interlocking joints that channel stress safely through the walls. The city's relationship with the sky adds another layer of intrigue. Structures such as the Intihuatana stone, often called the hitching post of the sun, align with solstices and other celestial events. The careful positioning of temples, windows, and sightlines shows that the Inca architects were embedding astronomical knowledge into stone. Even water channels may follow subtle gradients aligned with solar and seasonal cycles, suggesting that the flow of water was synchronized with celestial events, perhaps for ceremonial, agricultural, or symbolic purposes. Researchers like Maria Rostworowski and archaeologist Anthony Aveni have documented these alignments, noting that the Intihuatana casts precise shadows at solstice moments, and water features in the Temple of the Sun interact with light and shadow in ways that indicate careful observation of the sun's path. Beneath the terraces, modern technology has uncovered even stranger mysteries. Ground-penetrating radar surveys, including recent studies by the Pontificia Universidad Católica del Perú, suggest there are hidden chambers and tunnels interwoven beneath the agricultural terraces, some extending for hundreds of meters. While many may serve hydraulic functions, guiding spring water and drainage safely through the mountain, others hint at ritual or ceremonial use, echoing the Inca practice of integrating the sacred with the practical. The hydraulic system remains one of the city's most extraordinary accomplishments. Terraces, channels, and fountains form a continuous water management network, absorbing rainfall, filtering it through layers of soil, sand, and gravel, and channeling it safely away from slopes that might otherwise collapse. Hydrological modeling suggests the terraces can handle hundreds of liters of water far beyond the heaviest rainfall the region experiences, indicating that the system was designed not only for agriculture, but also to manage subterranean water pressures emerging from fault lines beneath the mountain. Perhaps the most humbling fact is the enduring stability of the site. Surrounding mountainsides, subjected to the same rain, earthquakes, and gravity, have failed repeatedly, collapsing under their own weight. Machu Picchu, by contrast, stands intact. The terraces green and fertile, the stonework tight, the fountains and channels still functional. Visitors might see llamas grazing along terrace edges or watch clouds drifting across sunlit peaks, unaware that the mountain itself has been engineered to survive, its hidden machinery operating silently beneath their feet. Some scholars speculate further. The overbuilt terraces, enormous stone blocks, and complex channels could hint at unknown functions, perhaps ceremonial, perhaps hydraulic, or perhaps both. The underground tunnels may have been used to channel water during rituals, or even to access hidden springs in a controlled manner. The integration of astronomical alignment with hydraulic engineering suggests that time, season, and water were all part of a single overarching design philosophy, blending observation, symbolism, and survival in a way that seems almost otherworldly. Standing on a terrace today, it is easy to forget the scale of the human endeavor. Millions of tons of stone, sand, and gravel were quarried, transported, and layered with such precision that the terraces remain fully operational. Each component was placed with intent, producing a city where agriculture, engineering, and ritual converge. Machu Picchu is not just a ruin frozen in time. It is an enduring machine, a living testament to the Inca's ability to read the mountain, the rain, the sky, and the earth, and to act on that understanding with unparalleled skill. Well, that's it for now. Thanks for watching. Did you like this video? If you did, please consider liking, dropping a comment, and hitting the subscribe button so that you don't miss out on our new uploads. Also, don't miss this video you see on your screen right now. It's truly unbelievable.